Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kieran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there.
I think it is difficult for guitar manufacturers to introduce and convince a lot of players around some of the innovations they're making. And some of these things are genuine innovations. Robot tuners were an innovation, right? And on paper, if you took that to a non-guitar player and said, hey, one of the things that beginners really struggle with, or even pro musicians, because they don't want to go out of tune, is we've developed these tuners that just tune themselves, and the guitar stays in pitch and does all the work for you, and it's a discrete little box, discrete in inverted commas, that sits on the back of the headstock. Most non-guitar players would go, well, that just sounds like a good innovation, that just makes perfect sense, guitar that tunes itself.
Greetings, welcome back to another Guitar Smarts podcast. This week we are considering what the future looks like for the guitar, for amps and manufacturers and all things to do with this instrument that we love. Will we see the instrument change as it devours new innovations and technology, or will we remain, as we have for quite some time now, loyal to 1950s and 1960s designs with a distrust of new technology? Should we even mention robot tuners? What do you think the next 1, 2, or even 10 years holds for guitarists? All these things and more will be discussed in today's show. As usual, remember to have a good rummage around in the links in the description of this podcast. In them you will find our merchandise shop, our donation page at buymeacoffee.com, our social media pages, and links to where you can leave us a good review because you love our show. Go and check them all out, and remember to come and give us a like on your favourite podcast app so that you get alerted when our next show is due out. Anyway, that's enough rambling nonsense from me. Let's get on with it. Hey Kieran, how you doing, mate? You well?
I'm good, mate. I'm really good. Really good indeed. We
haven't done this for a couple of weeks because we had a busy week last week, but it's good to see you, mate. And how have you been the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I've been really good, thank you, mate. Yeah, we had a week off last week. Did some planning, got some cool agendas and topics for upcoming episodes under the belt, which is good. So yes, it was time well spent. Yeah, I've been really good, mate. I've been busy. I've been busy with work, as most people always are. I've been busy with guitar stuff, which is good fun. I've been busy looking at the scores that have been submitted from people that did the pub quiz episode. People telling us how much they got out of 20. So I think we'll let the scores come in for another week. So if you did the Guitar Smarts podcast, what was it, it'll be a couple of weeks ago, where we did the first ever pub quiz, where Matt and I actually we didn't do too badly, much to our own surprise. And actually some of our listeners have written in with their scores as well. So keep submitting your scores into the social media. Message us via Instagram or pop it in the Facebook for that episode, the comment section for that episode, and let us know genuinely with all honesty how many you scored out of the it was 20 in total, wasn't it?
It was 20 in total, yeah. Well, good questions as well. I enjoyed it.
They were great questions, mate. And because I still have some merchandise that I want to give away to whoever.
Yeah, we did say.
I've got it here. I've got some Music Nomad little bits and pieces that they kindly sent us for some giveaways. So I will be sending those out to people who I genuinely believe got the score that they are claiming they got.
Fantastic, man. Well, yeah.
How have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. Work's been busy. Been noodling around on the guitar quite a bit. Been trying to kind of get a bit of a practice regime going again. But the thing I find for me is I don't do well at practicing if I'm just trying to practice a thing. I have to try and figure out how I have to find a piece of music that I love or that moves me, and practice that, So like, say I wanted to learn a particular scale or how to play over a particular chord. I just can't see seem to get it into my head if I'm sitting down and just doing exercises. I have to find some music or a song, or a solo or something by somebody that exploits that thing I'm trying to learn and that I really like the sound of, and then I have to learn it that way and then break it down afterwards. And it seems to be the only way for me things really sink in, is in a, if I'm experiencing it from a listener point of view in a musical way to start with. So
surely that's the best way, though. Surely
that is the best way, isn't it?
That's like the ultimate way. Is like learn a new song, then understand the song. And I mean, I'm pretty good at the learning a new song bit generally, but then I go, I've learned that now. That was interesting. And then I go, I'll go and learn another song now, and don't often stop to take the time to go, that's why that works. But I've been trying to force myself to be a bit more Matt with my learning, and just at least pause and stop and go, why was that interesting, and how did that work? And
exactly. I struggle to do that because I just want to play the thing I'm trying to learn to play. So sometimes you just go straight. One of the things I've forced myself to do, which for me is not game changing, but it's proving to be helpful, is I've promised myself I won't learn any kind of lick or solo or anything like that until I've learned the chords that are being played over. I've got to start from a point where I can go, well, now I know why this little section of the solo sounds so good, because I know in my head I'm playing over a G7 chord or something, So whereas before, if you'd just gone straight to a solo in a song, you'd never learnt all the chords. And it's not always immediately apparent why certain parts of the solo sound as good as they do. And then maybe you don't use it correctly further down the line. So I'm just trying to be a little bit more, goes back to that conversation we had with Richard Shaw about being consciously competent, just trying to be a bit more conscious about the things I'm doing and playing and learning. And trying to work at that. So I've been doing a bit of that over the last week, although I am just about to, so looking forward, which is kind of the topic today as well, isn't it? But looking forward over the next couple of weeks, my strat's due another little, it's definitely due a string change. And I'm thinking, I want to go over everything again. So I'm going to, just make sure it's all set up nicely and, give the frets a clean and fretboard and oil and stuff, like all that good stuff that we learned about last year, and the 8 steps. So it's due that. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I'm going to take the pick guard off when I change the strings and just get inside and clean all the pots up, just check everything's nice and tight as well, or any nuts and bolts or anything that need to be tightened up and stuff. So I'm just going to give it a really good servicing this week. It's overdue. But other than that, I'm all good. Mate.
Hey, I've been doing a bit of that as well. I did a quick half an hour session this morning before starting some work. Just went through all the guitars and just tuned them up to pitch again, adjusted the truss rod on a couple of them, just where temperature and stuff over the winter months have kind of had some movement on stuff, just little tweaks, because I just wanted to go through all of them and go, I have, of course, immense amounts of OCD, but I just wanted to just be reassured that if I was in the mood right for, because I am doing a lot of practicing at the moment, was if I wanted to pick up a particular guitar and play it, that I didn't have to then spend the first 20 minutes, half an hour just getting it back into that sweet spot again. So I just did a quick whiz of all of those. So that was good. I've been shopping in inverted commas. I've been actively trying to convince myself that I need a new steel string acoustic. Yeah. Despite having had my beautiful Finnish-made Landola D21, which I looked up the serial number on this week for no reason other than I must have been really bored. I don't know how old this guitar is. It's 26 years old.
Is that right?
26 years old, my acoustic guitar.
Wow.
And it's beautiful. And but for a while now, I've been thinking, I still remember some of the Larives I used to play back in the guitar shop when we used to sell them. I went to Guitar Village a couple of weeks ago in Farnham in the UK and tried out a bunch of stuff, man. I tried Taylor's, I tried the PRS acoustics, I tried Guild's, I tried Faith acoustics. I just tried everything. And I must say the Taylor's were really nice. They had a beautiful tone and a price tag to match, but they were really nice. But nothing still was going to me, yes, this is it. This is the acoustic of your dreams. So I came back home. And somewhere in the course of this last week or last couple of weeks since we've spoken, I thought, do you know what? I'm going to do what Matt was speaking about a little while ago. And I tried a bunch of different new strings on it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And all of a sudden I've fallen back in love with it.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why, but at some point in the last couple of years, I shifted from, this is going to get uber geeky and uber nerdy quite quickly. But I shifted from, I think I'm in the right place for it. I think I'm all right.
Yeah, it's okay.
I shifted from phosphor bronze strings, which I'd always used, to just regular bronze. I think probably there was a deal on, plain bronze strings. So I thought, oh, fine, I'll just go for that. Put them on the acoustic and you put a new set of strings on and you go, oh, great. That sounds really nice and bright and, new set of strings and great. Yeah, this is fine. And I've gone back to phosphor bronze now and I've remembered why I like phosphor bronze strings on an acoustic guitar. It's that extra warmth, it's that extra low end, and a new set of strings, even in phosphor bronze, are still bright enough and clear enough. And so I went with the Ernie Ball. Earthwood, I think. Yeah. Because I've been using Didarios for years on my acoustics. Really love those. I've been using some of the Martin strings for a while. I think the bronze ones I was using were the Martin ones. Anyway, a whole bunch of different ones. Anyway, for whatever reason, these Earthwood phosphor bronze back on that guitar have all of a sudden just made me go, oh, this guitar is actually really, really good. It's really good. And it's gonna take something quite special and probably quite expensive that I'm not willing to purchase at the moment to make me get a different acoustic. So there you go. You were right. Just try different strings.
That's really interesting, right? Isn't it? I mean, in my experience, last year, there was two things for me which I experienced, which I didn't expect to, which is I experimented with different string types for the electric guitars. And I partly expected to experience a little bit of a playing difference. I thought it's gauge really that makes the difference. I'm sure the material difference is going to be subtle, but I couldn't believe the real difference in material. I went from trying some stainless steel ones all the way down to kind of vintage style, pure nickel, things like that. And the difference is just astonishing. And the playing experience is incredible. And even the same type of strings from different manufacturers is quite something. Like Kurt Mangan strings, pure nickel, feel incredible to play. The Ernie Ball pure nickel ones also feel good as pure nickel strings, but not quite as good as the Kurt Mangan. I can see why Kurt Mangan ones are so expensive. £15 a set, and they're not even coated or anything. No. But they just feel so, really. I was astounded last year but also the guitar pick as well. I've completely changed what kind of guitar. I now play this Jim Dunlop jazz tone. It's like a 2mm thick thing.
2 mil? Wow.
It's a thick, fairly big pick. It's quite heavy. It's completely unpliable. Doesn't bend in the slightest. And I've gone from playing, 0.8mm Tortex ones to those, even for rhythm playing. And I love it. I love the feel. The sound from them is completely different as well. It's much kind of rounder sound, but you don't really lose any attack. It's a really good point there. If you're listening and you're thinking of something's lacking in your instrument, maybe you just try some different strings or some different picks. Changes your experience as you interact with that instrument.
Definitely, cool, definitely. Yeah, I've fallen back in love with that acoustic.
Awesome. So, Kieran, what are we talking about this week?
What are we talking about this week? Well, we thought we're still at the beginning of the year, although I must say, A, I can't believe how quickly this week is gone, and B, how we're now in February all of a sudden. But still, I'm going to say we are at the beginning of the year. Now, ordinarily, we would have some exciting, interesting, controversial guitar news to talk about, because normally at this time of year, Winter NAMM would just be finishing.
That's right. Yeah.
And there'd be a whole host of anticipated guitars for this year coming out to be released, etc. And we'd have some good fodder to talk about. Now, Winter NAMM, for obvious reasons, COVID, etc., has been shifted now, so it's not taking place until June. So, but we thought anyway, let's plow on. What does the year hold for guitars, and more broadly, what does the future of electric guitars look like? Because there's some stuff that's happened in the last year, some good stuff, some bad stuff, all kind of with this backdrop of COVID, which is having an impact on loads of industries, right? But also, some interesting things have happened with the guitar markets and band. So yeah. So I think we've got a pretty loose title for today, but it's kind of like the year ahead. What is going to happen? But let's see if we can make any predictions.
What does the future hold for the guitar?
Right, exactly.
That's kind of what we're talking about. Yeah, I wanted to start off with something actually, if you don't mind, because I thought.
Please.
You know, almost from a philosophical point of view, a lot of people would say, the past informs the future, doesn't it?
I like that.
And I thought, well, I remember when I started playing guitar. When I started playing, it was around this time I'd got a guitar for Christmas. I'd started getting guitar lessons in February time. I'd spent January learning how to play some chords with a Burt Whedon Playing a Day video. It should have been called Playing a Month, really. But it was fantastic. It was a fantastic way to start learning guitar. But that was the Christmas of 95, right? Mm-hmm. I just turned 13 in the October, and I got my first guitar for Christmas that year. And you know what I started doing around the time that I'd got a guitar? I'd started going to my local newsagents and I'd started buying Total Guitar magazine. Probably for about 5 years religiously. I had
me and you both. Yeah.
And the first, I thought, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and look up what was in that first magazine I bought, because I can tell you now, it was issue number 14, which would have been January 1996. And I thought, I'm going to see if I can find that issue online. I wasn't able to find a digital copy of it. I saw some pictures of it, but what I did find was somebody selling the CD that accompanied it online from Discogs. I don't know if you know Discogs.
Yeah. It's a great resource.
Yeah, exactly. Now, where is it? I've got it here somewhere. Because I was thinking, what gear was being reviewed? What new gear was out that was in the magazine on advertisements? I used to love going into those advertisements. The thing as well, if you remember with those guitar magazines, is guitar shops used to obviously advertise and put all the prices in for kit as well. So you could see how much things were and order things over the phone and get things delivered,
Yeah. Well, I can tell you a Gibson Les Paul Classic, which was a full fat, proper Les Paul, not the studio version. The Gibson Les Paul Classic, which I coveted at the time, retailed at £999. And on a good day, you could get it for £899 if someone was doing a sale. And that was always the thing for me. And that was that was the, full binding, 60 slim profile neck on it, the open coil humbuckers. Yes, they were putting, I think, the enamel ceramic type pickups in it versus the kind of proper Alnico magnets. But those guitars were beautiful, and they're going for like 2-3 times that price now if you can find a nice clean one on Reverb. And that was always the thing in my mind, is like when I grow up and when I have some money, I just need to get together £999 and I can get myself a Gibson Les Paul, with the spec that I want. Yeah. By the time I got able to afford to buy a Gibson Les Paul, trust me, they were not £999 anymore.
No, absolutely not. That's astonishing, really, to think that a standard Les Paul pretty much was sub £1,000.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was thinking, what was the future of guitar like back then? There's not actually that much information to be taken from the CD, but what it does tell me is what gear was being reviewed that week and what gear they did demos for that was available on the CD. The CD was fantastic. I used to love getting the CD.
Yeah, man.
Peel it off the front and try not to damage it because it was held on by some kind of horrendous sticky substance or tape or something.
That's it.
And anyway, the Vox AC30 was reviewed because there was a new version of the Vox AC30.
A reissue, presumably, obviously.
Of course, yeah. So it wasn't just a very late review of the original. Yamaha had a new Pacifica out, the 302S, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen it. They used to do a Telecaster style Pacifica that Mike Stern, the jazz guitarist, had a signature version of it. And that's actually a lovely guitar. So they demoed that. The DoD FX7 multi-FX unit was demoed, which is just a very budget floor multi-FX.
Did Dodd I used to call them Dodd. I don't know if they're called Dodd. Dodd still do
Dodd, DoD. Yeah, I think they do. I think
they do.
I think you can still get get some reissue stuff. I think they do like a couple of pedals. I think they're owned by Digitech.
Right.
But, and I thought this was interesting, that month, Roland released their first foray into, well, not their first foray, but they released a brand new multi-FX preamp, rack-mounted preamp called the GP100. But that was their first ever COSM based guitar processor. So COSM is something that Boss still use now. So if you go out and buy like a Boss GT100 Floor Effects, which is still, manufactured and available today, it's one of their flagship models. It's got the COSM processing in it, it's called Composite Object Sound Modeling. It's basically like, it's modeling. It's their first version of amplifier modeling. So that had just come out when I started learning guitar. And actually the Boss GT001, which I'm using right now to record my microphone through the USB interface, that has got the COSM symbol on it. That is a COSM processor. And I thought it was interesting to think, even back then, all that time ago, 20 odd years ago, businesses and companies like Roland were starting to really push the technology of what could be modeled and what could be created digitally for guitarists. And I know that goes way back anyway, to the 80s, But there we go. That's what the future kind of looked like for a young guitarist like me back in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
And how much of that has really changed, do you think?
Well, I still want to buy Gibson Les Pauls, so not a lot has changed for me really in 25 years, which is quite depressing, isn't it? I vaguely dabbled at looking at a Parker Fly when that came out, and then realised that wasn't going to be suitable. I did gig with a Line 6 Variax for a while, but ultimately I still covet a Fender Strat and a Gibson Les Paul. So interesting. And 25 years on, Gibson now have a whole division set aside to making reproductions of those old guitars. So it's an interesting area, isn't it?
Well, I think I was thinking about this, and I think the modern advancements we've seen over the recent years, and I think we'll continue to see, aren't probably really on the macro level. That kind of is the instrument itself as a whole, as that thing you hold in your hand, really changing? No, I mean, when we had our conversation about the John Mayer guitar recently, the Silver Sky SE, one of the big things we talked about was that fretboard radius, and the fact that it didn't have that late 50s small radius that Mayer had got on his core. We're talking about things here decisions were made about when our parents were young, and we're still they really did get some things right first time. There's no argument about that. Leo Fender and his team, there are things that they did right from the get-go which still people love today. There are people that love those things that weren't born when they came out.
Sure.
And they still kind of, why is that? But on the micro level, you've got things like Fishman Fluence, the new pickups that they created, which I think, they're utterly groundbreaking. I mean, you've got people like, Greg Koch and Tosin Abasi and all these fantastic guitarists who, come from different walks of life and different genres, and they love this new pickup technology that now you don't have to buy a wound pickup around a magnet, like they would have done back then, because that's, when you think about it, it's one of the most primitive electromagnetic designs there ever is. Wire wrapped around a magnet. It's exactly the kind of thing that was discovered centuries ago. Now Fishman are doing these printed PCB pickups, basically, where they're printing a PCB on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, and creating this, this printed coil, basically, that gives you the ability to sound however you want that pickup to sound, and indistinguishable from the kind of pickup that you'd really love from a vintage instrument. But it's noiseless, doesn't pick up interference, solves all the problems,
that's
things like that.
That's true innovation, right?
That's true innovation, and I think that's kind of where the future of guitar lies, right? We're always going to be playing a Strat or a Tele or a Les Paul. I don't think that's really going to change, and I think all the instruments that we love that aren't those instruments really are derivatives of those originals, right? You think all the Super Strats and things like that, and a lot of rock guitars are really derivatives of the dual humbucker designs of the Les Paul and things. But I think down on that micro level with the component types and the manufacturing innovations and processes, I think that's where the future of the guitar, the instrument itself, lies. But what do you think? So sorry to interrupt this conversation, but if you are still listening to this podcast, why not like and subscribe so you never miss another show? Go on, you know you want to.
I think it's a really exciting time at the moment that we are living in terms of that balance between old and new innovations. Because on one hand, you've got this huge resurgent and ongoing, fondness for how it was done back in the day, And if Joe Bonamassa wasn't running around literally buying everything that was made in 1950, then we would all be able to have a 1950s Strat or Les Paul, because there's part of all of us as guitar players that just still looks at those original designs and those original specs, and whether you dig the relict thing or the road worn look or whatever, or just want something in a kind of new but vintage spec, there is something, I don't know, about those old designs that people still love and crave for. And that's why you see stuff coming out of the custom shops of all manufacturers where they're going to tailor to that audience and that market because that is there. And at the same time, you've got, the example you've given around the latest Fishman pickups, you've got everything that has happened with amp modeling and effects modeling and processing, as part of the signal chain, where now, pro guitarists are turning up with fully digital, Helix rigs. And they may well be putting a lovely vintage Strat or guitar through it to play on, but the rest of their signal chain could be entirely digital and entirely modeled, because it gives that flexibility and it gives that authentic tone and the convenience. So I think in that way, it's a really nice point that we're at, which is you can quite happily and authentically create a rig that works for you using old technology and new innovation in a way that just suits you and works for what you want, without doing what I think we would have had to do back in the 90s, which is make a compromise right somewhere for sure. Which is like, if you wanted, I don't know, if you wanted a multi-effects processing unit like the Zoom multi-effects or Dodd multi-effects that we all used to use, or Boss thing, you had that convenience of 100 different effects all in one little stomp box. But you knew it didn't sound as good as like a full-blown rack mount unit from a Lasis, or getting those boutique pedals and making a proper pedal board. There was a compromise there. Yeah. And I think that probably that element of compromise has got smaller and smaller now.
Yeah, I think so too. Actually, you made a good point as well about the 80s. Arguably, that was the time when guitarists made the least amount of compromise for the most amount of kind of technology. You think about what your average kind of big-time LA session guitarist, will not mention his name, he would have turned up at a studio with, what would they have had? They would have played a fantastic vintage instrument, straight into maybe something like a Marshall or a Soldano head, something like that, or maybe like a Soldano preamp, something that sounded fantastic. And it would have been like pure guitar signal straight into the front end of an amp.
Probably two cabs or two heads to split stereo modulation effects and stuff.
Or they probably would have gone mono into the head, but what they would have done is they would have gone straight into a speaker cabinet, or they would have gone into something like a line level attenuator. So what the guitar was doing was hitting the amp, and then the amp was going into a speaker. But then they'd take that the amplifier's speaker signal, reduce it to line level, and then put that through. They would put that through a mixer and sent a separate auxiliary out to each effect. So they didn't even have a chain of effects. Every effect they had, every rack mount would get a clean signal, and then they would mix each of those affected signals. That's how they used to do it. It's like the most cleanest way ever, even by today's standards. Even by today's standards, it's like the cleanest way to do effects. We're not doing anything before your guitar hits the amp. Your amp's doing the job it's meant to do. We're taking a line level version of what comes out of your amp, and we're putting that individually into the effects, and then you can choose how you mix them back together, and then that goes into your mixing board. And that was like the perfect way to do it. You listen to all those 80s guitar sounds, they just sound so pristine because they were, right? They were using the technology that was available, but doing it in a way that didn't compromise, the real fundamental tone of a guitar. And I think when multi-effects started coming out, and you'd take your guitar into a multi-effects and then straight out into an amp or something, that was probably more of a compromise. than anything else. Whereas, now with modeling, things like your Helix and your AxeFX and stuff like that, you can recreate that kind of signal path in those items as well. So you can still do that kind of parallel effect processing thing that helps maintain your tone a lot better. So if anything, it's kind of like things got worse before they got better. It's interesting how things have kind of moved along. But one thing's for sure, like you said, is I think there's like almost like there's obviously an emotional connection, isn't there, between you and your instrument. Do you think part of the reason why we still covet and love vintage instruments more than new instruments is there more likely to be an emotional connection with those instruments with, because of they have this inherent mojo about them of being old instruments or being, like original designs, is what do you think?
Yeah. Why man, this is
that's a big question, isn't it?
It's a huge question, right? So I think, right, if we try and rationalize that question, for some people, it will be the particular specifications that those guitars had back in those days, right? Some people who are really into their guitars will go, well, in the 50s, they were making Strats with this type of taper on the neck and this type of width at the nut, and they were using these types of woods and this type of rosewood slab and these types of finishes, and they were winding pickups in this way. And all the guitars that I've tried that have those specs just for some reason work for me as a player, and that is why I gravitate towards those vintage guitars, because either it's cost prohibitive to try and order something with those exact specs from the custom shop now, or just because I want to get it as they made it. So you go, okay, well, that's somebody who's really rationalized why they like the vintage thing, because those specs are those specs, and it's probably more difficult to get those specs on more modern instruments, because either most players in the modern era don't really go for those specs, or the companies have just moved on and found better ways of doing things. So that I kind of get. I think there is a huge amount of people that like the romantic notion of something with a story, with some kind of, history. So that, the knocks on it, the wear on it, tell a story that it's lived a life, and it's almost like, because an electric guitar, if well looked after, can last generations and generations, right? So there's almost that kind of, I want to look after it and put it to use and enjoy it and then pass it on to somebody, and it has this whole legacy story with it. Some people love that, that kind of thing with it. I mean, I'm not sure that exists in many other things. I don't know many people that go, oh yeah, I'd like to really go and buy a used car that someone's driven to death and like stinks of old cigarettes and it's got a really particular cigarette burn here where somebody was traveling from London to Glasgow and just got really drunk that day and dropped a cigarette on the passenger seat, and that's that exact burn, and that tells a story. Do you know what I mean? Most people would go, I just want to go and buy a new car because then I'm driving a new car, and it's got that new car smell. But us as guitar people, we go, wow, look at that guitar, and look at the cigarette burn on that happened. So there is some sort of romantic ideal from it.
I think so. And also, I think further proof to that is actually, I think, in the failure of some modern kind of innovations to really kind of take off really well. I think there's some guitars and some guitar manufacturers that have created guitars over the years that have been really quite modern expressions of what a guitar should be. And they've kind of been rejected, or at least, they were around for a little bit of a flash in the pan. They were around for a while and you don't really hear about them that much, like the Parker Fly, which, its radical kind of design didn't help it in terms of how it looked, but it did have some interesting innovations, like the use of different materials and different manufacturing processes. And then even going back to the 70s when you had things like the Dan Armstrong guitar, which I think more recently it was used by like the Foo Fighters in the early 2000s, which was actually, it was a see-through guitar made out of Bakelite or something, but you could slide pickups into it. You could take a pickup out of it and slide a new one in. Things like that. That guitar never really hugely took off. And then you've got things like I think there was a company making a carbon fiber acoustic guitar at some point again, which I don't think. Yeah. I think the instrument itself. It's almost like things have to be snuck in, to be accepted. I think Music Man, are good at doing that. Music Man are really good at creating guitars which are really loved by people, but have really good modern appointments and really good variations on how things used to be done. Even just basic things like wood choices and finishes. But it seems to be such a difficult thing to see a lot of progressive change in, is in the manufacture of instruments. Nothing seems to. Do we even have to talk about the self-tuning headstock of Gibson guitars?
Do you know what though? Do you know what? It's tough, and I know we've slated the robot tuners before, as has the entire world, and they really had no place being bolted onto what is a beautiful, perfect design. But I think it is difficult for guitar manufacturers to introduce and convince a lot of players around some of the innovations they're making. And some of these things are genuine innovations. Robot tuners were an innovation, right? And on paper, if you took that to a non-guitar player and said, hey, one of the things that beginners really struggle with, or even pro musicians, because they don't want to go out of tune, is we've developed these tuners that just tune themselves, and the guitar stays in pitch and does all the work for you. And it's a discrete little discrete in inverted commas, that sits on the back of the headstock. Yeah. Most non-guitar players would go, well, that just sounds like a good innovation. That just makes perfect sense. Guitar that tunes itself.
Exactly.
It's great. But you introduce that to guitar players and they go, what are you thinking? And there's everything from the school of thought that it is a rite of passage and a hardship that you need to endure, and it's part of ear training to be able to tune a guitar and all of that, through to the fact that it upsets the physics of the instrument, the balance of it, or just plain looks ugly and nasty. That I think it's quite difficult for guitar manufacturers to introduce innovations that last. And I think this doesn't get spoken enough about though, but it's because probably the more things that you introduce as innovations, the more potential you have to get in the way of playing. And whilst these things sound cool or look cool on paper, or they're fun to play with in the guitar shop, ultimately the guitars that people enjoy playing the most, and therefore then end up becoming the ones that sell the most, are the ones where the innovation isn't a distraction. It just works and enhances the playing experience. And it goes back to your point earlier, Matt, which is the design of these things originally was just spot on for what it needed to do. So arguably anything else that you introduce into it that the player then has to think about and do something with, just gets in the way of the playing experience,
Well, I'd argue also that not necessarily that Fender, I'm going to say Fender rather than Gibson at the moment, because of the Strat and the Strat and the Telecaster, really on the face of it, are largely unchanged from what they were back in the early 50s, except for obviously a lot of the money. There's people out there screaming, what are you talking about? The fretboard radius, the wood types, I know what you mean. I know what you're saying, but still, it's largely unchanged. Does, a Ford Mustang today look like a Ford Mustang from back then? No, it doesn't. It's the change between Fender Strat 1954 and Fender Strat 2022 is not the same extreme, is it? They're close. They're still very closely related. But I would argue that part of the reason why they're still so loved is because all the music we love that was played on those instruments came way after they were invented. So it's almost like those guitarists and those artists were informed by those instruments on how they wanted to play and sound. It's like the instruments told them how we best sound, rather than them going, well, I've got, it's not like Jimi Hendrix had all these tracks recorded and then the Strat came along. He was playing the Strat when he was learning, probably. The instrument informed us how it wanted to sound and be played, right? And it's stubborn in how it wants to continue. So I think that's part of it, for sure. But what was I was going to make another point as well. I can't remember what it was.
I think it's really interesting, though, that the best innovation in guitar, arguably, right? And I'm just talking about guitars, so not amps and modeling and effects units and all of that, because that's a whole different thing. But arguably, the best innovation in recent times that people have embraced has been the PRS Silver Sky. Yeah. Probably, right? And
I think so.
It's just little, and even that was greeted with massive controversy when it first came out, but now has kind of cemented itself and I think the SE version will do likewise as a real great player's guitar. But really, honestly, I mean, the without going back over the whole spec list and all of that kind of shenanigans, if you're interested in that, go and check out the other episode we did on the PRS SE. Silver Sky, but basically that's a modern reincarnation of a vintage guitar, right? So, and that's the one that's flying off the shelf. So interesting.
Well, I would disagree that it's a modern iteration of a vintage guitar. I would say it's a vintage sheep in modern wolf's clothing. You know what I mean?
I think we're saying the same thing, but you're saying it in a much...
part of me kind of wants this disparate... I mean, this is probably a bit cruel, but I almost feel like John Mayer's tricked Paul Reed Smith into building the Fender guitar he wanted, right? It's kind of like, I wanted a Fender wouldn't do it. PRS can do it for me, but it's still a Fender. And all the PRS appointments are kind of like the compromises John Mayer made almost, because I'm sure it was designed around his favourite vintage Fender guitar. But anyway. So where are we going now? Where does the future lie? I mean, well, I did just want to mention quickly about the robot tuners thing about forgiving. The reason that didn't work for me, and this is just my thoughts on it. I don't think the guitar community rejected that guitar. I think the Gibson community rejected that guitar because one of the things, Gibson are their own worst enemy. Gibson are loved for all the instruments they made in their past, not for the stuff they make now, and they're seeing modern success in the areas of their business where they're recreating the vintage instruments the most. And I feel sorry for Gibson because for all the times they've tried to come up with innovations and new things, they get told back to what you're doing, please. Do the stuff you did well in the 60s and 70s. That's what we want from you. Because the reason I say that is because there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea of having a guitar that tunes itself. Peavey did it about 5-6 years ago. They released a new guitar that had exactly the same technology. Nobody ridiculed that. In fact, it got fantastic reviews in the guitar magazines, but none of Peavey's customers think it's a bad idea. Peavey's customers think that's a great idea. I can just press a button and it down tunes for me for the next rock song I'm doing. And there's the Line 6 if you're a Line 6 Variax player, it's expected that your guitar digitally can retune itself. So that innovation of and by itself is not a bad thing. I think it was just in the wrong brand. It should have been on a guitar that didn't have Gibson on the headstock.
So true.
They don't want self-tuning guitars. They want the pain of something that doesn't stay in tune because that's what the vintage instrument did. So that
and the modern ones as well, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
To be fair,
I think that I thought that was worth commenting on. But what does the future?
Well, it's been an interesting year. Or a couple of years, right? Because some industries have really suffered through COVID and lockdown. Yes. Guitar manufacturing has certainly been affected in a number of different ways. We're seeing long lead times. Again for obvious reasons, factories closure, parts. Most manufacturers don't make a lot of the additional parts that go onto guitars themselves. Some do, some don't. But long waiting lists for guitars based on manufacturing delays, parts in short supply, all of that kind of thing. We're starting to see. So that's created a kind of backlog. But in kind of marketing terms, sometimes that supply demand thing can work in your favor and scarcity can create more demand for it. But what I think a lot of guitar stores have experienced actually during lockdown is some of the best sales that they've seen in recent years. Certainly Fender for 2020 and 21, those were the highest revenue years or financial year in their entire history. More people picked up the guitar and started to play than at any other time in their history. So I think that's really interesting, and it's starting to reflect in the pricing as well that you're seeing. Because of what's going on with supply, because of the popularity of the instrument now, which is brilliant. These are all great things. It means more listeners for our podcast, surely.
I hope so.
But that's a great thing. People are picking up the guitar. Guitar music is there. It's back, and not that it ever went away, but it comes in and out of fashion. So I think there's some cool things happening. We've spoken about the pricing of guitars and the impact on the used market, but at the same time, you're getting incredible quality coming out from smaller luthiers, guitars made out in the Far East and Indonesia, China now. So actually, the choice is there, and yes, everything things suffering with lead time. So I don't know. I think the future is bright for guitar players, for guitar availability, for stuff coming out. That is, it can be exciting, even if it's just a reminder of the stuff that's come before it. So yeah, I think it is it's going to be a good year for guitars. I'm really looking forward to what comes out and gets announced in June at the NAMM Festival. I think
me too.
There is an audience now, a bigger audience, a captive audience, an audience that have re-picked up the guitar or started for the first time, or that have just gone, you know what, I'm just going to buy more guitars because I want to now. That I think that 2022 could be a really exciting year for what comes out.
I think so too. I think you're absolutely right. I'm really looking forward to the next NAMM show because I used to love following the coverage of that online, from the various different dealers or different manufacturers that were posting videos. And there's always, everyone tries to align their new innovations with the NAMM show as well because it gets so much coverage. That's the trade show to really release things. So I'm looking forward to that too. And I hope this year's a good year as well. I think it's great to know that Fender have done so well. I think Fender have been boosted by their online teaching platform that they've released over the last couple of years. I mean, I can't watch anything on YouTube without being interrupted by an advert for Fender Play. I think part of that is that kind of brand management at Fender is really commendable, isn't it? The fact that they're, because when the pandemic happened, Fender made their online platform free for people for like 3-6 months at a time. So if you've got Fender in your face all the time, you know how marketing works, right? It's not my profession, but I know, you're aware of how marketing works, and brand management is really about occupying a space in somebody's mind, isn't it? It's kind of
beautifully said,
when they go into a shop to look at something, they're going to feel more comfortable spending money on things they're familiar with. Yeah. So if you're seeing the logo Fender all the time because you're looking up guitar lessons on YouTube from people, when you go to buy your next guitar, you're going to feel comfortable. But so I think Fender have been very shrewd through this.
I agree
in helping support their brand, right? And then also, regardless of that, the product range I think is the best it's ever been.
Yeah, I agree.
There's literally something from Fender at every, you can buy the Affinity Strat from Squire, for £120, or you can go and buy a custom shop there for £7,000. And there's something at every price point between those two across multiple different guitar designs. I think it's just fantastic how they've done as a company. But I do think there are other companies that are going to struggle because of supply chain issues. Because supply chain issues is going to cause cash flow issues. And, there might be some smaller companies that struggle and they might reduce their output maybe. Who knows? I'm interested to see what happens with guitars this year. But one interesting thing, you shared an article with me before we had this chat from an online blog, I think, called Electric Jam. And it was talking about guitar prices going up in 2022, driven by a number of things about inflation and the supply chain and the fact that there's more guitarists now. So that's driving demand for instruments up. And I thought that was really interesting about how the price of things will now go up. We're already seeing that going up and they'll probably stay there as well. So if you're thinking of buying something, now's the time to do it, Good excuse to use, really. If you need to go and buy a guitar and you're waiting for later in the year, now that's a good excuse to get it now instead.
And I'm so glad that you've put that onto record, Matthew Oliver, because this year I want you to buy a new guitar. So you've literally just said the immortal words that I will quote back to you forevermore. So let's get that guitar shop visit booked in, and let's get that visit booked in. Go buy some new toys.
I did want to talk about a couple of things which really impressed me actually we've already spoken about one of them, which was the Fishman Fluence guitar pickups, which I think are going to be huge. We're seeing them now more and more in different guitars, off the shelf rather than being something you'd buy as an aftermarket upgrade. But have you heard of Hook guitar amplifiers?
I haven't.
So I think Anderton sell them. They've been around a couple of years. But this for me is that as a manufacturer, they're doing it's like guitar amps have always been, you're either a fan of digital or you want pure analog, right? You want the valve amp perfection of, everything that's come in the past, or you want some kind of digital capability that you don't get the sound of analog. Well, they seem to me to be the first company that have melded the two together in such a wonderful way. They're not modeling amps that they do, but the particular amp I'm looking at has been reviewed by Paul Davids, who's got a massive YouTube channel. and it's called the Wizard. And the thing I love about it is it's a proper analog amplifier, 2-channel amplifier, full valve amp. It's got multiple speaker outputs, but it's got some adornments which are just, I think it's everything that the modern guitarist now needs going forward. If you're a professional guitarist, I think you need amps that do these things. So it's got a built-in reactive load, so you don't have to connect it to a speaker. You can switch the load on and you can go direct out on an XLR.
Cool.
It's also got a USB output on a valve amplifier.
Wow. So for putting into your desk or into your computer,
into your desk. It's got a MIDI control as well, so you can control everything to do with it over MIDI. The USB connection also allows you to upload IRs to it, so impulse responses. So if you want to upload some kind of impulse response for particular Celestion speakers in a particular cab, you can, and it'll sound like that. Right. But here's the thing I love the most about it. It has presets built in, so you can create up to 32 presets, I think, and every dial on the front, the gain, bass, mid, treble and volume, not the master I believe, but all those that you use, they're all motorized. So as you select a preset, the motors will move all the dials directly to where you wanted it. So you've effectively got digital control over all the analog capabilities of this valve amplifier, which is just, how cool is that? You can just buy yourself a cheap MIDI controller that sits on the floor. You can save all these presets on the front of the amp for a clean sound, a drive sound, by moving all the knobs, save them, and then just record them. And the video is so cool. All the knobs turn when the presets change really quickly. That's your lead sound. So that is kind of like the perfect amalgamation of kind of, modern capability and vintage tone. And I think we're going to see more of that kind of thing. You guarantee it. I think, within 5 years' time, some of the bigger brands are going to be doing amplifiers like this. Some of the Fenders, Marshalls, you're going to start seeing less of here's our digital range, here's our vintage range. They've got to start coming together a little bit more. So that's what I think is the future of guitar amps. We're going to start seeing less of this segregation between vintage style amps and modern style amps. We're going to start seeing them meld together a little bit.
Well, you heard it here first, people. There you go. Matthew Oliver's prediction for the future. I think that's a great place for us to kind of leave that door open and revisit maybe later in the year and go, well, this is what we said at the beginning of the year. Yeah. What happened? What happened? Brilliant.
Maybe I'm wrong. Like we said before, there's resistance, isn't there, in the guitar community?
Yeah, there can be. So there can be. Well, I'm really looking forward to. We'll do a show covering the highlights of Winter NAMM in June, and then we'll see what the direction is going. For this year and beyond with guitar and amp. And yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see what's going to come this year. I think it's gone off to a great start with some of the stuff from PRS that we've talked about already, and some things that are bubbling away. So yeah, let's see.
I agree. Looking forward to it, bud. Plans for the week?
Learn more songs. It would appear that I've joined a band again, which is good.
Excellent, man.
Well, I think I've joined a band. Let's see. I've got some depth slots for a band, but I think there might be some ongoing discussions as to me joining on a more permanent basis. So I better learn the set list.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I might give you a call.
Not another Simply Red covers band, is it?
No. Those years of shame are far behind me.
Mick Hucknall said the same thing.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, that's me. Just learning some songs.
Amazing. Yeah.
How about you, mate? Anything highlighted for this week?
Well, probably just a little bit of practice here and there. Writing some more backing tracks. I think I'm enjoying kind of making backing tracks, and I'm probably gonna try and turn it into something that maybe we can, share with other people, make available to people if they want to download some fun backing tracks to play.
Oh man, I've had a little taster of some of the stuff that you've been producing. I must say, I can't. They are superb. I can't wait for you to get some of these out to the Guitar Smarts podcast audience. I think these are some brilliant backing tracks
fantastic.
Thank you, guitarists. So yeah, look forward to that,
stuff,
mate.
Brilliant. Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. Cool, good stuff, mate. Really great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, buddy. And more of the same next week.
More of the same next week, indeed. Have a cracking week, buddy. I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, pal. Have a great
All
week.
the best, Kieran. Bye. Thanks so much for joining us this week. We love to hear from our listeners, and we would love to hear about your opinions on the future of guitar. What do you hope for? What do you not want to happen? Come and talk to us on our socials. You can find links in the description, as well as links to all other kinds of things. Go and check them out. Anyway, have a great week. See you all soon. Bye-bye.